From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxtun Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Board to reconvene. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Gleason.
Here.
Supervisor Scrivener.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Here.
Supervisor Couch.
Here.
Supervisor Perez.
Here.
Thank you, and welcome to the 2 p.m. session of the Tuesday, December 5th, 2017 meeting of the Kern County Board of Supervisors. We're going to start off with a report on actions taken in closed session, and I'll turn to County Counsel Mark Nations. Mr. Nations, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The board did meet in one closed session to confer with its labor negotiator. Under item 65 from the morning agenda, there was no reportable action taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nations. If you'd like to follow along with our agendas today, they're located in printed form on the two tables near the exits. We're going to start off with our consent agenda items. All items listed with a CA above the item are considered to be routine and non-controversial by county staff. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion. If a member of the audience wishes to comment or ask questions regarding an item or items on the consent agenda, they may do so prior to a vote being taken on the consent agenda. A member of the board may remove any item from the consent agenda and it will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board concerning the item before action is taken. So at this time, I will read the consent agenda items. Starting on page 2, items 3 and 4 are on consent. However, I have a new recommendation to read on item number 3. That is going to scratch everything in all caps, starting with open hearing, and that's going to say continue to Tuesday, January 30th, 2018 at 2 p.m. Then on page 3, items 6 and 7 are on consent. On page 4, all items 8 through 13 are on consent. On page 5, all items 14 through 19 are on consent. On page 6, all items 20 through 22 are on consent. On page 7, all items 23 through 25 are on consent. On page 8, items 26 through 28 are on consent, as well as 30 through 32. On page 9, all items 33 through 38 are on consent. On page 10, items 39 through 44 are all on consent. And finally, on page 11, all items 45 through 52 are on consent. Are there any members of the audience who would like to make any comment on the consent agenda? Okay, seeing none, I'll return to the board and request a motion to approve the consent agenda unless someone would like to remove an item.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for clarification.
Supervisor Maggard?
The one that you indicated on page 2 of our agenda that was to be continued to January 30, 2018, was that item 3 or item 4?
That was item 3.
Ms. Oviatt, wasn't item 3, I'm sorry, wasn't item 4 going to be continued?
It is as well. It's for the same date.
Oh, okay, I didn't
Yes.
catch that. Very good,
Yes.
thank you.
Yes.
They're both continued, thank you.
Right. Okay, any other comments? Or do we have a motion?
Motion on consent.
Second.
You have a motion and a second? Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Okay, before we move on with the agenda, I do need to make an announcement that the board will not be conducting a special meeting on Monday, December 18th at 9 a.m. as stated on page 12 of this agenda. So we will not be having a meeting on December 18th. That was listed under upcoming meetings. Okay, back to page 2 on our agenda. Item number 1 is public presentations. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons to address the board on any matter not on this agenda, but under the jurisdiction of the board. Board members may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. They may ask a question for clarification, make a referral to staff for factual information, or request staff to report back to the board at a later meeting. So at this time, I'll ask if anyone has a public presentation on an item not on the agenda. Okay, seeing none, I'll move on then to board member announcements or reports. Supervisor Perez?
Just briefly, Chairman, thank you. I just want to repeat my announcement from this morning. December 18th, the same day we will not have a meeting. You can use that time that you would have spent coming here and listening to us and instead go by the Dream Center, which is we've opened up a new Dream Center that is quite gorgeous, and it, of course, assists foster youth as they're transitioning out of the system and, of course, becoming stable. So we will be collecting on that day socks of all sizes. Apparently, during the winter, a lot of the foster youth get a lot of water in their shoes. I was not aware of this, but it means they often are left with wet socks. So we're collecting socks and then small toiletries, sort of like hotel ones. So if you have old ones that you haven't used, you can bring them. But also small toiletries. A lot of these kids couch surf and also are homeless. So it will be a fun day, and you won't have to hear us drone on all day from the dais. You can just come and have a nice party with us. So we'll have flyers here next Tuesday. So if you can't make it, you can always deliver to my office as well. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Perez. Next item on our agenda is on page 3. That's item number 5. And this is an item under our Planning and Natural Resources Department. This is a request from Brian Morrow Construction, Inc. and TL Morrow Construction, Inc. by LAV Pinnacle Consulting and Engineering, Inc. to change various permitted uses from urban estate residential to suburban residential less than or equal to 4 dwelling units, net acre, and change the zone classification from limited ag to estate, quarter acre, and limited agriculture to drilling item, and 20 acres located at the southeast corner of Hageman Road and Rudd Avenue. This is in District 4, and I'll turn to Lorelei Oviatt, our Department Director. Ms. Oviatt, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chairman and members of the board. I'm here with Craig Murphy, Division Chief for Operations. As noted, this is a specific plan amendment and a zone change. Today is one of our 4 official general plan windows for 2017. As noted, it is 20-acre parcel at the southeast corner of Hageman Road and Rudd Avenue, as shown on this map. It is currently designated under the Western Rosedale specific plan as UER, Urban Estate Residential. However, it is zoned A1, which is limited agriculture. As you note, this is a highly developed area with custom single-family lots with a couple of remaining areas. Access to the site is Hageman Road, which is a 110-foot right-of-way. However, please note that Rudd Road is our future freeway. The original request that the applicant brought forward was a specific plan amendment to change the UER to SR and go to estate quarter-acre lots, which will result in approximately 29 lots. Staff, in reviewing this recommendation, determined that that was too intense for the area, given the existing development. Therefore, we are recommending you deny the specific plan amendment, change the zoning to estate half-acre with a drilling island, and the applicant has agreed to this recommendation. That will match the existing UER and result in approximately somewhere between 21 and 24 lots. As noted, this neighborhood, if we could go back to the neighborhood picture, has a mature neighborhood called Trinity Estates. And the concern of this neighborhood is the future removal of the cul-de-sac at Spring Crossings Drive. It is a fully developed cul-de-sac, and although there might have been an intention by the circulation that someday it would go through, they did build a complete cul-de-sac, and so the people who built and live in their houses there and have created a vibrant community, as you can see by the many letters you've received, are concerned that it will have to go through. They have indicated, they have a representative here today to speak to your board. They have indicated to me that they are pleased with the half-acre recommendation and are merely objecting to any design that would require that they open up that street. This matter will be considered at the tentative track map stage. We have made a note in our file, and anyone who submitted a petition, no matter their distance, will be receiving a notification for the track map. At that time, a new design will be provided by Pinnacle Engineering, and the circulation will be discussed with the Public Works Department about the feasibility of leaving that cul-de-sac. This project did go through the comment notification, which you have received all the comments, as once again they have focused on this opening of this cul-de-sac. Planning Commission hearing on October 26, 2017, the Planning Commission did recommend denial of the specific plan amendment and approval of the more restrictive zone change to estate half-acre, along with the drilling island, which is a 2.5-acre drilling island with which the owner is doing to provide for access for the mineral rights owners. If you could point out the drilling island, Mr. Murphy. That completes staff's presentation. The recommendation is to adopt the resolutions, the recommended findings, and enact an ordinance disapproving the specific plan amendment as requested, approve the zone change to estate half-acre on 17.61 acres, and to DI drilling island on 2.5 acres as recommended. And I am available for questions.
Thank you, Ms. Ovey. I'll ask if there are any questions from members of the board before I go to the public. Seeing none, we'll now open this up to anyone in the audience that would like to make any comment. If you'd like to make a comment, please come forward and state your name. And we'll set the clock for 2 minutes a speaker.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm Larry Pinnell, a resident of Trinity Estates, immediately east of the proposed development. As Mrs. Oviatt has indicated, we are certainly here in support of the rezoning to half-acre lots in the development. We're concerned about the elimination of the cul-de-sac at Spring Crossing, and perhaps that will come up at a subsequent meeting for consideration. But speaking for my neighbors, we're concerned that it'll introduce new traffic issues into a subdivision where those traffic issues do not exist today. In addition, if we understand the proposal correctly, a planned median strip along Hageman Road will require that residents of Trinity Estates be required to use Spring Crossing Drive to enter into the new development that's currently being considered by the board to gain access to westbound traffic on Hageman. Some of this just doesn't seem to make sense to us. And we have been invited by Mr. Pope to meet with he and his staff at the appropriate time to see if these issues cannot be resolved. We've also met with Mr. Vovilla, representing the engineering firm of the developer, and he's indicated flexibility and a willingness to meet with the neighbors of Trinity Estates. So we're not here to object to the zone change that you're considering today, but we certainly would like to be involved in discussions on access to Hageman Road and the elimination of what we thought to be a cul-de-sac on Spring Crossing Drive. Thank you for your time today, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Pinnell. Any other speakers, please?
Good afternoon. My name is Mike Ray. I live on Spring Crossing Drive. I just want to kind of just add on to a few things that Larry had to say. And one is that Trinity Estates is really a different community than a lot of other communities. We're very tight-knit. We get along exceptionally well. And like Larry says, that we're all, everybody I have talked to, all in favor of the half-acre lots next door. And but the Spring Crossing, you know, it was a completed cul-de-sac like the staff had stated, so we all thought it was a completed cul-de-sac when we purchased our homes. And all we're looking for is possible alternatives on making Spring Crossing a thoroughfare to the new development. Like Larry says, people traveling east or west on Hageman will now have to all go through Meadow Lakes, through Spring Crossing to access the new development, which will really increase a high amount of traffic on my street where I live and our neighbors. So some of the alternatives that we've thrown out there just for consideration is, I know in Talus Ranch, they have back-to-back cul-de-sacs where you can still have a cul-de-sac on the new development and have access for emergency vehicles to go across that if necessary. There's possible ability for the new development to have access through the development south of the proposed development onto Meacham Road, so that would give us 2 access to the new development, or possibly another emergency access in the new development besides the main entrance. So like I say, the people in Trinity Estates were really looking for just an alternative of making Spring Crossing a thoroughfare or a main artery or entrance into the new development. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Ray. Any other comments? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public portion of the hearing and return to the board. Supervisor Couch, this is in your district, so we'll start with you, sir.
Thank you. So just let me reiterate and make sure of one thing. Everyone who is within, what's the spacing, 300 feet of the tract map, when that comes forward, will be notified of that public hearing? Is that right?
Supervisor Couch, through the chair, yes, and we are adding everyone who has submitted a petition and their
Okay.
address. So we're
Good.
going to expand the notification list.
And I know that you notify each of us, each of our offices as well, but could I ask you on this particular one that you flag it for me, maybe give me a call or say, by the way, this is the one that, just bring it to my attention when it comes
Certainly,
forward.
Supervisor Couch. In addition, we have indicated to the engineer that when they have a design, before we even start the formal process, we would ask they meet with the community, and we will let you know when that happens.
And could you stress to that developer that he should meet with you, Mr. Pope, and the community, that would be a good idea?
I will.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So to those of you, I assume all of you that are sitting here are from that community. We will keep an eye out on that. Those were, Mr. Ray, I think you had some pretty good suggestions, and some may work, some may not, but those are things that I would like Mr. Pope and Ms. Oviatt to consider when this comes forward at the track map stage. But we're not there yet, so, and thank you, by the way, you must have done some good work with the developer, because I don't think we had the same proposal from the developer a week or so ago. So I appreciate your work on that. So I'll make a motion to approve the staff's recommendation and ask that you just stay on top of that, staff stay on top of that for me, specifically when that track map comes forward. Thank you.
Second the motion.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you. And that takes us to our next item on the agenda. This is an item under the Public Works Department. This is item 29. It's a public hearing to amend sections 10.50.020 of Chapter 10.50 of the Kern County Ordinance Code to increase parking fines, to increase fines for parking violations on county-maintained sections of Cuddy Valley Road, Frazier Park. And Craig Pope, our Public Works Director, is here with us. Mr. Pope, when you're ready, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The item before you is to amend the schedule of parking penalties. The county has a schedule of penalties for all kinds of different kinds of parking. If you park where it says no parking, you park in the red, there are fines associated with that. The item before you today is to actually amend that by, in one particular area, up in the Frazier Park area. And if I could have the overhead, the clerk. This is Cuddy Valley Road up near Frazier Park, or it's beyond Frazier Park. And when it snows up there, they come from Southern California to come play in the snow. This is a real challenge. It gets very crowded up there. We work very hard with the Highway Patrol and the Forestry Department. But when it does snow, it gets very packed up with traffic. And this causes a problem in many ways, a safety problem, because we can't clear the snow. We can't get up there with motor graders to clear it. The emergency crews can't get through. It's just gridlock. And the public that lives up there just gives up. They don't even know how to get into town. I hear some of them that normally it's a 15-minute run into town, takes them 2 hours to get into town. So we've been working very hard with the Highway Patrol and Forestry, and They last year worked real diligently and turned people around when it started to get congested. That worked really good. Now we just have a couple local parking area problems where it's wide enough, they get off, they park, and then they start darting across the roadway in traffic like this. So we are asking to increase the fine in this area. This morning, County Council brought before you an item on the consent agenda to make some no parking areas, but we're asking that you bring that fine from 40, which is typical throughout the whole county, up to $150. And that's just because we want to try and get their attention on this case. It's a safety problem. It's just a nightmare up there during the wintertime. So we're proposing $150. This is to match the forestry's fee that they charge. And the Highway Patrol is in concurrence and recommends it. We also recommend it. So with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Pope. Are there any members of the public that would like to make any comment on this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll return to the board. This is also in District 4, so I'll go to Supervisor Couch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Pope, and thank you to all of you that worked on this. And I don't see Lieutenant Foyer here, but I know that the CHP is in support. We may come back to you with some minor modifications. I had a brief conversation with my staff today that had spoken to Lieutenant Foyer, and he may be looking for some additional help up there, but this is a really, really good first step, and I'll make a motion to approve the staff's recommendation. Thank you.
Second.
You have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. And that brings us to the conclusion of our agenda for this afternoon. So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, December 12th at 9 a.m.
So moved.
We are adjourned.